Ksenia disappeared when she was 11. What happened to her would only come to light years later, and only because on July 30th, 2023, a woman walked out of a private home in the village of Smolino, Chelyabinsk Oblast, a woman no one had seen for 14 years, emaciated, in a state of extreme agitation. The first thing she did was contact her sister, who helped her reach the police, and what this woman told them initially provoked the same reaction from everyone. It was hard to believe. She had spent 14 years in a locked room in that house, 3 square meters, bars on the window, a lock on the outside of the door. She was 33 at the time, which meant she was 19 when she first arrived. Her entire youth, from teenager to adult woman, had passed behind a single door. She didn't escape because she finally found the courage. She escaped because the man holding her had a psychiatric episode. He became dangerous to his own mother, who called an ambulance. They took him away. And for the first time in all those years, the door was left unlocked. She didn't wait. She walked out immediately. At that point, neither neighbors, nor local police officers, nor anyone who'd ever visited the house suspected that someone had been living in confinement behind those walls. And it was this escape that set off a chain of events that would eventually lead to Ksenia, Festivalnaya Street in Smolino. This is a private sector neighborhood where everyone knows each other, but no one enters anyone else's yard. A wooden house with neat window frames, just like dozens of others around it, except the fence was noticeably higher than the neighbors. Behind it, sheds, wood piles, broken bricks, junk. From the outside, an ordinary homestead where no one gets around to tidying up. The Cheskidov family had been known here for decades. The mother, Valentina, worked as a paramedic, then at an optician's, attended church, chatted with neighbors. One of them, Nadezhda Ivanovna, considered herself a close friend and had even been inside the house. The father was a metal worker, a quiet, unremarkable family. No drunks, no scandals. No one raised any questions. But the neighbors said little about the son, Vladimir. Withdrawn, strange, rarely seen in public. In the village, people assumed he'd either moved away or was back in prison. No friends, no visitors, no conflicts. Not the kind of person anyone pays attention to. Inside, the house was divided into several small rooms. Filth, neglect, cockroaches. But none of that was visible from outside. Shutters closed, gate locked. And it was right here, in one of these rooms behind the wall from the kitchen where the mother cooked every day, that a woman had been held for 14 years, a woman no one ever asked about. Later, investigators would begin reconstructing this woman's biography, and it would become clear why no one searched for her. Ekaterina Belyankina, born 1990, Chelyabinsk. Her mother drank, her father too. Both lost parental rights, then both passed away. Katya and her older sister Lena were first sent to a rehabilitation center, then to an orphanage. Katya was around 5 at the time. She grew up quiet, withdrawn, and easily led. She'd had a limp from birth, clubfoot, a leg injury, according to some accounts, developmental delays, not the kind of person who draws attention, and certainly not the kind anyone stands up for. She aged out of the system at 18. The state provided a room in a barracks on Derbenskaya Street. Her sister Lena lived there too, with her younger son. Katya enrolled in training to become a seamstress and got by on odd jobs. She occasionally visited her uncle Anatoly, the only relative still in touch. But her sister had already built her own life by then and showed little interest in the younger one. Katya's circle shrank to just a few people, then dissolved entirely. No steady job, no close friends, no one who would notice if she disappeared. And so, in the fall of 2009, she was 19. She was sitting on a bench at the Chelyabinsk bus station, alone. No plans for the evening, no one waiting for her at home. That's when a man approached and offered her a drink. Cheskidov was 37 at the time. Uncle Anatoly would later say that Katya would go with anyone who offered her chips and beer. For her, attention from an adult was never a warning sign. It was a habit from the orphanage. If someone's treating you, everything's fine. They drank. He offered to take her back to his place in Smolino. She went. At the house on Festivalnaya, they sat down for tea. An ordinary evening. Or so she thought. Then Ekaterina stood up and said she was leaving, and that moment changed everything. Cheskidov said, quote, 0. He pulled out a weapon, led her to one of the rooms, pointed to the bed, and locked the door from the outside. An orphan against a man with a weapon, there's no choice in that situation. From that evening on, Ekaterina Belyankina ceased to exist to the outside world. No one reported her missing. She simply vanished, and not a single person noticed. Came in and explained briefly. Quote, one quote came in and explained briefly. Underscore, quote, underscore one, underscore, not a request, not an offer, a statement. He took her documents immediately. Passport, everything she had on her. Ekaterina didn't even have a phone before this. From that moment on, she had nothing connecting her to the outside world. No name on paper, no number to call, no one who knew where she was. The room was 3 square meters, a bed, peeling wallpaper, filth. The only way in was through the kitchen. After Cheskidov's arrest, investigators and journalists were allowed inside. They documented what they saw on camera: a wide wooden bench instead of a bed, a single light fixture on the ceiling, large cockroaches everywhere. The bars on the windows were covered with fabric, not for comfort, but so no one outside could see what was happening inside. The door was secured with wire and a padlock that Ekaterina couldn't remove. She didn't have the height or the strength, but the lock was only the first layer. When Cheskidov left the house, he restrained her using a contraption, 2 particle boards joined by metal brackets to which her hands and feet were fastened. A wooden box attached to the boards was placed over her head. Her mouth was taped shut. She couldn't call for help, couldn't move. She lay like that for hours until he returned. And here's what's important. This wasn't improvisation. This wasn't a sudden outburst. Cheskidov deliberately built this system. He gathered materials, calculated the fastenings, tested whether it held. This room wasn't just a place where he kept her. It was designed specifically for that purpose. Every day began the same way. Ekaterina cleaned the house, cooked meals, did laundry, scrubbed floors, carried water, served both Cheskidov and his mother. Valentina would later say in court that Katya lived like a queen, didn't work but had everything provided for her. In reality, she was a servant in a house she couldn't leave. Cheskidov drank. When he drank, he was violent. When he didn't drink, he was still violent. He forced himself on her regularly and systematically, not in outbursts but on a schedule. He would later tell investigators it was all consensual. The investigation classified it differently. During the search, they found discs with explicit content, restraints, and devices for subjugation. This wasn't a collection that appeared by accident. It was assembled over years. When outsiders came to the house, a plumber, the mother's acquaintances, Ekaterina was hidden and locked away in advance. The plumber, Kamid Baybasanov, fixed pipes just a few meters from her room and heard nothing. Nadezhda Ivanovna drank tea with Valentina in the kitchen while, behind the wall, Ekaterina lay restrained. This wasn't a single incident. It was the order of things, every day, 5,110 days in a row. Over 14 years, Ekaterina had 2 windows to the outside world, an old television and a chessboard. Cheskidov would turn off the TV as punishment, for tears, for discontent, for any sign of resistance. The only source of sounds from outside, voices from the airwaves, other people's news, other people's lives, taken away with a single motion. What remained was silence and chess. Cheskidov had loved chess since childhood. He attended a sports club, School Number 9, Novosinko. It was probably the only place he ever achieved anything. Not at school, he was withdrawn there. Not among peers. They mocked him. Not with girls. He couldn't get one. Only on the board did he win. He made Ekaterina play game after game. She didn't want to. He insisted. This wasn't entertainment. The TV could be turned off. Chess could not. The game continued until he decided it was enough. She was required to sit across from him, make her moves, lose. And every game looked the same. He led, she submitted. He decided when to start. He decided when to stop. That board on the table was essentially a miniature version of everything happening in that house. 14 years. She was 19 when it started, 33 when it ended. During that time, Cheskidov drank, deteriorated. His mental state worsened steadily. He left the house, fell ill, at times lost control of himself. There were moments when he physically couldn't have stopped her, and yet, in all those years, not a single attempt to leave. The first thing that comes to mind? She had nowhere to go. An orphan, parents long gone, sister busy with her own life. Where would she go? To the police without a single document? Back to the barracks on Derbenskia Street where no one was waiting? The theory sounds logical, but only at first glance. Uncle Anatoly lived in Chelyabinsk. She could have reached him. Police accept reports even without a passport. There were strangers on the street 10 minutes from the house. All she had to do was step past the gate and ask anyone for help. No plan needed, no documents needed, just walk out. But she didn't. And Cheskidov wasn't a genius or a strategist. Everything in that room could have been overcome with time. And she had 14 years, so something else was keeping her in that room. Something we don't know yet. Later, when journalists dug into his past, they learned that in school he was the type no one noticed, until they started mocking him. 10 grades, no hobbies, no attachments, not a single girlfriend the whole time. Just the board and the pieces. There, you don't need to talk. You don't need to be liked, you just need to calculate moves and win, and that was what he did best. At 17, aggravated assault, first conviction, 4 years in a correctional facility. The village wasn't surprised. The strange kid was now a strange convict. Nothing unexpected. He returned from the facility to the same house, to the same mother, to the same village where he still had no one close to him, except now he was in his 20s, and he already understood that nothing would work out for him the normal way. After his release, he tried to live a normal life. He married a woman from Yekaterinburg. He traded goods at the Tagansky market, then moved to Moscow, worked at Leningradsky station. The marriage didn't last long. They never officially divorced, but they stopped living together. No children. Then, in 2005, in Moscow, he was assaulted and robbed. His mother would later tell the story on Malakov's show. Men in masks showed up, took everything, money, car, documents. He came back from Moscow, hungry, injured, head trauma. He registered at a psychiatric clinic. He never filed a police report. He returned to Smolino to his mother, to the same house. No money, no job. He was 33. From that point on, he essentially stopped going out. Lived on his mother's pension. No acquaintances, no activities, no goals. The village went on with its life, while behind the high fence on Festivalnaya, it was as if nothing was happening. 4 years later, in the fall of 2009, he would approach an orphan at the Chelyabinsk bus station. By the summer of 2023, Cheskidov was drinking almost non-stop. His mental state was declining rapidly and visibly. He was now threatening not just Ekaterina. His mother, who had lived under the same roof with him her whole life, felt for the first time that her son was dangerous to her. July 30th, an acute episode. Cheskidov was in the garden. He was incoherent. Valentina, a former paramedic, understood what that meant and called the psychiatric hospital. They took him away. And in the commotion, the door to the room was left unlocked, for the first time in 14 years. According to Ekaterina's testimony, it was the mother who helped her leave. Later, charges against Valentina for complicity in the abduction were dropped. The investigation took into account that she had aided the escape. She was placed under travel restrictions. Most likely, the help amounted to, "Go while you can." But here's what matters. That help didn't come from compassion for Ekaterina. It came the moment the threat touched Valentina herself. Ekaterina didn't hesitate. It all took minutes, 14 years, and minutes to walk out. So it wasn't about physical ability. There had been minutes before. Something else had kept her inside. The next day, Cheskidov was stabilized and arrested right in the hospital. In custody, he broke down crying. Meanwhile, Ekaterina made it to Chelyabinsk and went to Uncle Anatoly. Her sister filed a report, and an investigative team arrived at the house on Festivalnaya. They opened it up. Everything that had been hidden behind the shutters for 14 years became evidence in the case. Investigators documented, photographed, cataloged. Then they moved to the outbuildings and the yard, and in the cellar, the same one where the family stored food, they found a pot. Inside were the remains of a person, skeletal fragments, an unidentified woman. Another one. Who she was, the investigation didn't know at the time. When she ended up in that house, unknown. What happened to her? Also unknown. Her identity was never established. Not then, not later. The only thing confirmed, she was found in the cellar beneath the floor of the house where Ekaterina had spent 14 years. From that moment, the case that began as a kidnapping moved into an entirely different category. After the arrest, journalists went door to door among the neighbors. The reactions were all the same. They didn't know. They never suspected. One neighbor had lived next door from 2016 to 2022, 6 years across the fence. She said that once at night her dog ran off. She went out looking and Cheskidov was smoking in his yard. She asked him to help. He did. Calm, quiet. They found the dog and went their separate ways. In 6 years, she never heard a single cry from the house. The mother came out more often, said hello, chatted with her friends. A normal elderly woman. One local later told journalists, a quiet suspect, as it turns out. He didn't cause scenes, didn't yell, didn't attract attention, just lived behind a fence, doing what he did in silence for years in the center of the village. Valentina didn't just know, she had integrated the captive into her daily life. She told her friends that her son had brought home a daughter-in-law, hardworking, clean. When acquaintances came to the house, she'd say, quote 5, but never showed her. The excuses were always the same, quote 6, quote 7. Ekaterina was hidden behind the door, and when guests came, the mother would send her son out of the kitchen. Maybe she was afraid he'd say something, or maybe she didn't want them to see what he was really like. And here's what else is important. Valentina wanted to include Ekaterina in her will, not out of gratitude, out of calculation, just so she wouldn't leave. So she'd keep taking care of the old woman, scrubbing the floors, cooking, carrying water, a free caretaker who literally couldn't go anywhere. Cheskidov's father also lived in the house. According to the investigation, he knew what was happening. He passed away in 2018 without ever saying a word to anyone. So the whole household knew. Mother, father, son. 3 people and 1 locked room that guests were told. The daughter-in-law's sleeping. Another theory that came up most often after the story broke, Stockholm Syndrome. Over 14 years, Ekaterina could have gotten used to it, accepted this life as the only one possible, stopped wanting freedom. The psyche protects itself, finds support even in hell, starts seeing the captor as the one who feeds, shelters, turns on the TV. It happens. But here's what doesn't fit. She didn't hesitate when she escaped. She acted quickly, precisely, without a single moment of doubt. That's the behavior of someone who knew exactly what she'd do when the chance came. She wasn't making a decision in that moment. She'd made it long ago and simply waited. 14 years. A person with Stockholm Syndrome doesn't flee like that. They hesitate, come back, defend the one who held them. Ekaterina did none of that, meaning she wasn't broken. She hadn't adjusted. She hadn't given in. All those years, she understood where she was and what was being done to her, not because she had nowhere to go, not because she didn't want to. So something concrete, not abstract fear, not hopelessness, kept her in that room. Something she had seen with her own eyes. August 1st, 2023. Cheskidov was brought to the Sovietsky District Court of Chelyabinsk, disheveled, unshaven, hunched over, no money for a lawyer. Prior conviction, expunged, unemployed. Investigator criminalist Alexander Kotarev would later describe the interrogations briefly. He says that when he met girls, he fell in love and believed they were now supposed to live with him. Girls, plural. Kotarev said it calmly, like a detail from the testimony, but the detail caught and lingered. Cheskidov admitted to the abduction but categorically denied any coercion. 14 years in a locked room. tape on her face, a restraint system. And by mutual consent, in his worldview, this wasn't a crime. He fell in love. She was supposed to live with him. All logical. When the ruling on pretrial detention was announced, he broke down crying. After that, he was transferred to Moscow for a forensic psychiatric evaluation. It was conducted in Moscow, and the conclusion essentially turned the case upside down. Chronic mental disorder. He was unaware of the nature of his actions and could not control them. Not competent to stand trial. November 27, 2024. The Sovetski District Court of Chelyabinsk issued its ruling. Guilty on all counts. Kidnapping, coercion, what was found in the cellar. All proven, all confirmed. He faced up to 25 years. He didn't receive a single day of actual prison time. Compulsory treatment in a maximum security psychiatric facility. Indefinite, but subject to review. Not prison, a hospital. At subsequent hearings, he was brought in by ambulance wearing hospital pajamas with a number on the back and slippers. He shouted at journalists from the corridor, "I'm not guilty." In the courtroom, the same, "I didn't do anything, they put me away for nothing." Valentina moved to an apartment in Chelyabinsk and continued telling journalists through the door, "My son's a good man. She came on her own and settled in nicely." And so, the result. 14 years of captivity. One is in a hospital, the other under travel restrictions. July 30, 2023. Ekaterina Belyankina walked out of the house on Festivalnaya Street. Between the point of entry and the point of exit, nothing. No job, no relationships, no friends, not a single decision of her own. After her release, she was placed in a rehabilitation center. Then she moved in with her sister. Uncle Anatoly said she doesn't want to talk about what she went through. _14_14_. At the trial, she was brought in through a back entrance, accompanied by a police officer and a social worker. She appeared in the hallway for a second, sweatsuit, hood up, then immediately went into the courtroom. And from the courtroom, Cheskidov passed a message to her through her uncle. "15, the uncle later recalled, 16. But the threat hung in the air, because compulsory treatment isn't life. A review is possible. She didn't break, she didn't adjust, she didn't accept, she waited, and when the door opened, she ran. January 2008. The Sinagori bus station. A year and a half before Ekaterina, Cheskidov meets a girl. Her name is Oksana. She's around 30. The same script, drinks, a trip to Smolino, staying over. Except Oksana wasn't kept in the room. She was held in a shed, on a dirty mattress. Sometimes he let her out into the yard to see the sun. In the fall of 2009, Ekaterina arrived. For some time, there were two captives in the house at once. In April 2011, Oksana tried to escape. She made a dash for the exit. Cheskidov caught her and inflicted injuries that were incompatible with life. Then he placed what remained of her in a pot and buried it in the cellar, where they stored food. And he did this in front of Ekaterina, deliberately, as a lesson. He said, 17, "That's why. 14 years. Not a syndrome, not weakness, not nowhere to go. She saw what happened to those who tried. She saw the weapon. She saw what he used. And then, for 12 more years, she lived in a house beneath whose floor lay the one who had dared. Oksana's identity was never established. No relatives were found. There's no one to remember her. And Ekaterina survived because for 14 years she did the only thing that kept her alive. Didn't move, waited. And when the door opened, she walked out. If you liked this video, hit like, subscribe to our channel. See you next time.